is the on track racing between the two drivers really getting out of hand? And is Michael Massey, when he failed to do something the last time, did he really set a dangerous precedent?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, to answer the second part of that question, I tend to be of the mindset that if they come away from it cleanly, if they don't make contact, you kind of err on the side of letting the drivers race. That being said, I know rules and regulations differ between different racing series, but in terms of today, I think there's no question a line was crossed. I think ultimately, I think both drivers had points in the race where you can argue. I mean, Red Bull was certainly arguing that Lewis forced Max off a track at one point. I'm sure Mercedes were probably arguing that Lewis was entitled to the corner. So it's always kind of a judgment call in those situations. And like I said, when it is a judgment call, when there isn't any contact, I think you have to err on the side of letting them race. But the contacts that happened, obviously between Verstappen and Hamilton, and then what happened before that, where Verstappen figured he had to let Hamilton through, I just feel like Max is a little too overly aggressive at this moment. And I understand the situation that he's in. He's trying to hold on to a championship lead when it looks like Mercedes have a slight advantage right now. But I think there needs to at least be a conversation, and I understand there is a conversation happening with the stewards right now. I think in a lot of respects, he was probably lucky to get away with just 5 seconds today and still bring the car home in second place. All I got to really say is, if you're a neutral fan right now, if you're a Ferrari fan or a McLaren fan, or you're a new Formula One fan who doesn't have an allegiance to a team, this is a great time to be invested in the sport because there's so much action and so much drama going on. I just wish that it could be kept a little bit cleaner. We wouldn't be having these conversations as often as we've been having them, and hopefully F1 fans will have a little bit of a short memory, and we can just go into Abu Dhabi next week, hoping and praying for a safe race without a lot of conflict and a thrilling end of this thrilling championship season.
I mean, we could have seen the championship decided essentially if Lewis Hamilton had sustained more damage when he hit Max Verstappen in the back. Then the championship would be essentially mute by next weekend. Michael Massey, they have allowed this to really get to a point where, especially with this race, I was really just tense, just thinking, what's going to happen next? We know those two are not going to allow the other one room to pass next race weekend in a reconfigured track. So this is just going to make it where this next race weekend, I'm really concerned that I think the championship, those two are not going to give each other an inch. And this is something where, especially for 2022, the FIA, Michael Massey, they really need to address.
If I could just come back in quickly, okay. Joe, I just want to say I want to see hard, positive evidence and telemetry from both Max Verstappen and, in fairness, Lewis Hamilton as well, because a lot of people were asking the question, why didn't Lewis just drive around Max when he started slowing up to give the position back? I think, it's best not to rush into judgment, and I want to see the full telemetry and everything before we fully take a position one way or another when it comes to what the FIA need to do and where they need to step in and intervene.
Yeah, Ben, I think that's a completely fair and valid point. We'll wait to see the telemetry, wait to see the evidence, and then we can determine what in the world happened there to see. I know because some people have been suggesting that Max brake check Lewis there to try to crash him out of the race, and while others said that Max was just giving up the spot and Lewis just ran in the back of him. And yeah, but the telemetry data will definitely tell the full story, and then once we have that, then we can respond. And as I mentioned before, we've seen a lot of controversial moments in this race, including questionable officiating. So in your opinion, what was the most controversial moment of the race to you?
Starting off, I would say I think the most controversial moment in this race was when Max Verstappen allowed Lewis Hamilton to get around, but the way he used it, manipulating essentially where he gave him the room to get around at the DRS detection zone. So, of course, he had the DRS zone advantage in the main straight. I think this is something the FIA needs to clarify before the next race when a driver needs to give up the position.
Yeah, Joe, I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's something that needs to be addressed because did Max let Lewis back by? Yes, but he did it in such a way that it was very easy for him to get right back at him. So I don't know if going forward, it needs to be you let them by and then hold your position for a lap or something like that. I don't know if that's the answer, but I think that's something that needs to be talked about because, I think the camera panned to Toto Wolff, and he just kind of smiled because Toto had a racing career himself. I think he knew exactly what Max was doing there. But I think ultimately it comes down to the moment where they actually made contact. I think that's going to be the biggest talking point, the most controversial talking point going forward. And like I said, we're still waiting for full telemetry to come out and be available to us. And I think sometimes the FIA are a little bit slow to get that out. I'd like to see it available a little bit quicker. But I think anytime that there actually is an incident, there is contact that could potentially alter the race. Joe, like you were mentioning, if Lewis had significant enough damage that he had to retire, Max went on to win the race. That's a championship right there. And we'd be talking about Max being the 2021 world champion right now. So I think that's something that needs to be addressed and is probably going to be the biggest talking point going forward. And one thing, I don't know, Joe, if you could maybe bring up Amber's comment. I think she said something about Sergio Perez here in the chat room with his accident. I think it's important to remember for the business side of the sport that there are two championships. Everybody's obviously so focused on Max and Lewis, but going into this race, the battle between Mercedes and Red Bull for the constructors was actually even closer. And with Sergio falling out with his accident, and obviously Lewis winning the race, having the advantage over Max, and then Bottas right behind in third, just stealing the podium away from Ocon on the line. I think it's now a 28-point gap in the constructors, Mercedes over Red Bull, their advantage there. So, Christian Horner was talking on the post-race show. From a fiscal standpoint, obviously, all the prestige is in the drivers' championship, but the constructors does matter to us. But even he acknowledged it would take a miracle at this point for Red Bull to overcome the gap that they now face with Sergio falling out of the race today. So I just wanted to bring that up real quick. With everything going on today, that was a critical moment on the constructor side of things that we're going to look back on. I think this might be the moment that the constructors slipped out of Red Bull's hands today.